meeting to order.
Amy, I hear you. Good. Best of luck to you, Doc.
It is 6 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to review and accept our agenda. I do want to note to our board members that the presentation on mental health and safety needs to be moved because our presenter went home violently ill this afternoon at 4:30, and we don't want to catch the bug that she apparently has. So we will be removing that from our agenda at this time. So would someone like to make that motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Eric. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you for the agenda. Our next item is communications with parents, citizens, and staff. I see we have quite a few people here tonight. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I would like to say a couple of things. Number one, I want to make sure that anything that you have to say to the board remains respectful to everybody here, to students, staff, and whatnot. You cannot use names in anything that you want to say to the board for privacy. Because there are so many people, and I'm assuming that most of you would like to speak, I am going to limit you to 2 minutes unless somebody waives their right to speak so that you can continue. And Derek is going to be our timekeeper, so he'll motion to you when your 2 minutes is almost up. Let's see. There will be no dialogue between the board and you, so you get to say what you want, but we will not respond because this is just a time for you to tell us what you're thinking. And please make sure you state your name for the record so that Charlene can get it. And if you have any written communication that you're reading from, that you give it to her before you leave. I also want to remind people to sign in before you leave also, so that your name is captured for the minutes. Okay? Any questions? Okay. So, communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Who would like to speak first?
I guess that should be me.
Okay.
Well, first off, thank you, and many of you already know me. My name is Barry Whitney Jr., and I live here in Brandon, Vermont. I've had 8 children, of whom 5 are still in school, 4 of whom attend Otter Valley here. First off, I want to say thank you to you all for your time and your dedication to our school system. I'm here tonight as a concerned father of a 9th grade daughter. Recently, she has had encounters with biological males in the bathrooms and locker rooms. Just last week, the gym teachers held meetings with their classes and informed them that all students must share the locker rooms together, no matter their sex. No email went home to us parents, no letter, nothing. Later that day, another uncomfortable encounter with a biological male happened to my daughter in the same locker room. I immediately requested a meeting with the principal, which he granted promptly at 2:30 that day. The meeting was professional, but very alarming. We were told any person could use any bathroom, locker room they choose. We were also informed that the school cannot ask students their gender. I found this very disturbing as the person in particular in this case uses men's and women's bathrooms on the same day. I asked the principal what Otter Valley was doing to protect my daughter from the biological male in the shower areas. He informed me they have no solution to that yet. I then asked where can my daughter go to the bathroom without fear and intimidation of a biological male coming in. We were told she would have to use the single-use gender-neutral bathroom or the nurse's bathroom. This is totally unacceptable. We were given the Vermont Agency of Education's best practices for schools regarding transgender students, but it seems the school either doesn't read them or only picks out what they want. For starters, paragraph 1 says, it is a policy of the state of Vermont that all Vermont educational institutions provide safe, orderly, civil, and positive learning environments. No Vermont school should feel threatened or be discriminated, no Vermont student should feel threatened or be discriminated against while enrolled in Vermont schools. I'm sure I'm getting close to 2 minutes.
I'll give you my time.
Okay. It further goes on to say, recent U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights Guidance and Resolution agreements state that Title IX, and I want you to note Title IX, protects all students, recipients, institutions from sex discrimination, including transgender students and students who do not conform to gender stereotypes. Bold and underlined in the same paragraph, it says all students need a safe and supportive school environment to process academically and developmentally. Administrators, faculty, staff, students each play an important part in creating and sustaining that environment. Schools should be proactive, not reactive, in creating a school culture that respects the values of all students. It further states, I can just do this, all persons, including students attending school, have privacy rights. It goes on to explain more about privacy, and it says, except as set forth herein, school personnel should not disclose information that may reveal a student's transgender or gender nonconforming status. Under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, only those school employees with a legitimate educational need should have access to those records. So right there, it states certain people in the school must know the gender of the student, conflicting to what we were told in the principal's office. It further states, in those cases, schools should develop a plan for information sharing, which supports the student while balancing the parent's right to information. Parents' right to information. This will eliminate gender flip-flopping on a daily basis. FERPA, or the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, referred to in the state's practicing, quote, state's best practices, and I quote, gives parents rights with respect to their children's records until the age of 18. Must be getting close to another 2 minutes. The school needs to be calling home to talk to the parents to discuss the student's gender identification. I know as a father, if my child is identifying as a cat, or a dog, or a tree, or a male if biologically female, or female if biologically male, I have a right to know about it. This might help to eliminate issues going forward. The real concern is the violation of privacy and intimidation of biological males in the women's bathrooms. The same can be said for biological females in the men's bathrooms, but this poses a lesser risk and undoubtedly happens much less frequent. The best practices state the use of restrooms and locker rooms by transgender students requires schools to consider numerous factors, including but not limited to the transgender student's preference, protecting student privacy, the student's age, and protecting the safety of the students involved. Right now at Otter Valley, a 7th grade male may be in the shower area with a 12th grade male, which in itself is very uncomfortable. Now imagine a 16-year-old female having to be in the shower area with a 16-year-old male. It's totally unacceptable. Further yet, a 7th grade girl may be forced to be in the shower area with a 12th grade boy. Where is the respect for age? Where is the respect for privacy? Where is the respect for fear and intimidation, all outlined in the Vermont's best practices? You may not be aware, but none of the showers here at Otter Valley have doors. Some have curtains, but many are open with no curtain at all. There is no space in them in the men's shower to get dressed. It must be done in the common area. Where is respect for privacy? Bathrooms are commonly locked. Just this past November on a day, all men's bathrooms were locked and the only nurse's office bathroom was available. Several bathrooms are padlocked open daily at the entry doors, allowing people to look in and into the mirrors to see what's happening. Where's privacy? The answer by the school administration? Use the nurse's bathroom. And if you want a private shower, you have to use the one in the vault, referred to by Principal Ruppel. Excuse me, I don't know if I should have used that name, but after the males, referees are done showering. This was the principal's response. This is segregation. This is discrimination. My daughter went to the nurse's office last week. 6 people were in line. She was late to class and was almost disciplined. Where's the safe, orderly, civil, positive learning environment? Otter Valley is chaos, where students come and see little structure. Administration protecting the few and not the whole, and it needs to stop. As for Title IX, the federal law that the states has based the best practices on, a federal court of appeals, a step lower than the Supreme Court, just ruled weeks ago, December 30th, 2022, in the case of Drew Adams versus the School Board of St. Johns County in Florida. Adams, a biological female student identifying as male, sued the school who made students use bathroom based on biological sex, forcing this student to use the female bathroom even though she identified as a man. The High Court just ruled on this, wherever I put it. And the quote of the opinion was, "This case involves the unremarkable, a nearly universal practice of separating school bathrooms based on biological sex. This appeal requires us to determine whether separating the use of male and female bathrooms in the public schools based on students' biological sex violates 1, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and 2, Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972. Their decision, we hold it does not. Separating school bathrooms based on biological sex is constitutional and passes Title IX and conforms with Title IX. Therefore, I ask the board to create a policy that protects the rights and privacy of all students, respect the age and beliefs of all students, upholds a common sense logic that females should not be forced to be with males if they want to get showered or get dressed at school, and develop best practices for all students and not just the few. I appreciate your time and thanks for listening.
Thank you for yielding.
Who'd like to go next? Jen?
So I'm Jennifer Sear Tenson. I don't have an army here to give me an extra 2 minutes, so I will try to fit what I have to say in 2 minutes. Thank you, Francine. So the best practices does in fact state that in addition to the right to privacy, the right to safety, also the right to social integration. When you are asking a student of transgender, or I am going to use gender creative because I don't like the word non-conforming because it puts a negative connotation to things. You're telling them they have to use a gender neutral space, but it's not fair to ask a binary child to use a gender neutral space. Already we have inequality. Perhaps what we should look at is privacy spaces within those spaces. Private stalls for showering, private stalls for changing. Any child that has something that makes them different, whether they view it themselves and it's their body habitus, it's a skin condition, it's their pubertal change. It's not right in the age of consent to be having children be in a space where they can't actually consent to who sees their body. In the age of telephones that have cameras and video cameras, irregardless of what you view yourself as, you should have a right to privacy and safety. And that means all students. Raising a voice for one does not mean you're canceling a voice for another. Taking a minority and giving them equal rights does not mean you are stealing from the majority. You are raising them to an equal. Student-centered means that they have the ability to choose how they see their own bodies, self-determination, bodily autonomy. To assert that someone who views themselves as a gender that doesn't align with what their biological gender was is there to be a predator to another or act in a lewd fashion is frankly ludicrous. It doesn't align with their bodily image. So they are not going to be wanting to show their body to others. They just want a space where they feel safe that aligns with how they view themselves. And so, again, I'm asking for us to look at a way that we can continue to protect, as put forth by Vermont policy, a safe space for all with social integration. If you're asking them to use a space outside of how they see themselves, frankly, that's segregation and it's discrimination.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay, so I've got something to say. What happens
Wait,
when
name first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Davina Courier. What happens when a girl gets upset with somebody? And I know I had a son that went to this school, and I informed him if there was a girl in the bathroom, walk out. Plain and simple, walk out. He wasn't allowed to use that bathroom. And I have told my daughter the same thing, that if there's a boy in there, what's to stop this pissed off girl to cry rape? And then what's going to happen? And that's my big issue. And what's going to happen to that one kid? It could be a downright lie. And we're going to wait until then before things get changed? To me, that's not right. I mean, someone can get mad at my kid, someone can get mad at his several kids, and cry rape when they didn't do anything. And trust me, I absolutely adore his kids. And that's not fair to this boy or the girl that's been put into that situation. And I know as a parent to a boy, I'd be very upset if my son was charged with rape. And I know my son well enough to know he wouldn't do that at all. And I'm thinking that it's going to come to that point where someone's going to cry rape or sexual harassment from one of those boys before anything gets done. And now this kid has completely ruined, it has ruined his entire future. And is it worth it to do that?
Is there anyone online who wishes to speak? Taking that as a no. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Heather DeSorda. The sexual harassment, I believe, will become a big issue. Last year, a student was accused of sexual harassment by a teacher for simply coughing in the hallway. So now that you have these showers, locker rooms where any boy and any girl can be in there together, as she had said, what if one of these girls gets mad at one of these boys? What if this boy does not really consider himself a girl, just wants to be in there? And when he gets caught, because a girl complained that doesn't identify as a female, turns around and says, but I do identify as a female. What if a young man who identifies as a female is in the bathroom with another girl, and he sees her naked, and he gets aroused because she's got a nice pair of tatas that he wants? What then? This is absolutely ludicrous. Boys and girls should not be in the same bathroom, shower, etc. Until this boy who identifies as a female has a surgery and has his area cut off, he is a boy. Plain and simple. That's all I have to say.
Go ahead, Jen.
My name's Jed Byram. I have 3 daughters that I likely won't send here because I have choices, and I would feel utterly comfortable with them in the room with anyone who wants to go in a bathroom with them, with the transgender students here, with the non-transgender students here. It's a bathroom. It's not an exciting palace of anything else. It's a bathroom. And I would say to you, school board, I don't have a lot to say. I'm not a parent here right now. My partner's children are here, and I know what they express for nervousness about this place, and it is certainly not the transgender kid trying to make it through a day without being belittled, without being hassled. The harassment that occurs here is not targeting the straight white dude. And I think everyone knows that. And I think this conversation is kicked around on social media before any of us ended up here. And I think as someone who runs an institution for kids do this better than us. So I would say to the school board, listen to them, because they're not afraid. They're taking your fears And if they're expressing fear, it's coming from all of you. Kids do not have the problems with this that we do. I am blown away every year by listening to my kids. They're like, oh yeah, I know that they were born a girl and now they're a boy. I know that they were born a boy and now they're a girl. They don't care. Kids see it in a more pure way. They don't see all the various agendas that are attached. And I think most of the kids at this school would look at the adults and say, Jesus Christ, get your act together and stop adding to dissent, creating conflict when there doesn't need to be any. The kids, in conjunction with the school board and the administration, can figure it out. I'm not saying it's not complicated. It absolutely is. I work for an organization that figures this stuff out and changes it constantly. And the school needs to be nimble, and the school board needs to be nimble, and the parents and the kids are understanding for the most part. The parents need to be understanding, I think. That's what I have.
Thanks, Jen.
I just have one thing to say, and that is,
Linda Piper.
oh, I'm sorry, if we cannot ask more of our children than what adults are willing to do. And if adults can't get their heads together and have some morality, how can we expect the kids to? I've heard stories about the restrooms, toilets being ripped up out of the floor, and restrooms being demolished. Kids need guidance. They need leadership. They do not need coddling. If they feel like being a cat and they want a litter box, oh my gosh, then they need to eat in the corner on the floor like cats do. It's the coddling that's triggering these children to lose their morality. There's got to be some guidance from parents. Thank you.
I'm Amelia Whitney. So I have been through quite a few incidents with this. I have been to the principal quite a few times. Me and Colin actually have started petitions around the school. We have papers that we have written a brief paragraph on that have explained why we're doing this, and it's really only to protect the rights of our own safety. We have been, what day did we do this? 6, 7? I don't even remember. It was right in the beginning of February when this law that apparently has been around since 2016 got brought up to our school last week in gym classes. Me, Colin, and Santa Torres, who is unfortunately not here, we all came together. We wrote papers. I know I wrote an essay. I know Sienna wrote an essay. Colin started these petition forms. And we walked around the school 3 days straight, and we got signatures from mostly everybody in this school. And we roughly probably came up with about 200 about, from females and males. Teachers, actually, some teachers have signed them too. And that's just, we came across as a point because the school is not taking everybody's word for this. They're only looking, they're trying to protect the minority over the majority. And it's very sad for students who are very uncomfortable. That's what I have to say.
Dara?
I'm Darlene Kelly. I apologize for coming in late. Can you hear you? Hi. Sorry for coming in late. I came in late, and so I'm not sure what we're having a conversation about. I mean, I get the content, but what is the issue at hand that brings us all together?
So this is, right now it's just public comment, but it does relate to some transgender policy that it's not a policy, it's an admin memo that we have, and some things that have happened in the school recently. And so people are here to talk about it. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
My name's Andrea Cannell. I have a daughter that goes here. Over the summer, we had an incident that ended up with a court order keeping a boy at this school away from my daughter. I will say we did communicate with the principal, the administration here, and it was handled very well until about a month in when these two students were illegally put on the bus together. My daughter left the school bus in tears. She came and met me at my job at Neshabie in tears in the middle of an anxiety attack. My worry is that if they can put two kids that they know, everyone knows there's a court order that separates these children. There was a safety plan put in place by administration that separates these two kids. My question is, if they can let that fall through on the school bus, how can they control the kid that last week ran in, said, I'm in the girls' locker room, and then ran back out and went to the boys' locker room? If they can't control court-ordered policies, I'm wondering how they can control basic moralities of students, just our basic safety. I'm asking the board to look at our student safety and how we can look at their privacy. I'm not saying that all of these boys that identify, or these biologically males that are identifying as females are going in to be lewd or to, with any malintent. However, I'm worried about how my daughter, if she's in the locker room changing for PE or changing for sports that she plays, how can she be protected if a biological male that is identifying as a female comes in and changes in the same room? Not saying anyone's looking to be aroused, anything's going either way, but why should my 14-year-old daughter be forced to witness male genitalia? That's all I have to say about it. I just want my kids safe here.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Sandstone. I don't actually have some sort of big thing to say other than I guess when I first saw this on Facebook, it was incredibly inflammatory, and the comments are to the point where they've made me feel fearful for my community in terms of the reactions and that sort of thing. So I am wondering if it seems to me like this is on the agenda and that at some point there's going to be some kind of clarification, because I think both Jed and I were kind of reading through things, going onto the website, trying to read what is this memo that's being discussed, what happened. It turns out it was 3 years ago that this memo was even written. I asked my kids who go to school here what happened. One of them said he had no idea. The other one said something about some 9th grade boy went into the bathroom because he thought it would be funny and he did it twice. I have no idea, and I'm not saying that my kids are experts or anything like that. All I'm saying, because they are not everywhere all at once, all I'm saying is I know that my kids didn't know that this was an issue, and what I was seeing on Facebook was an entirely different thing, that there was gigantic, honestly, to myself, I would describe it as hysteria, and which is, has a snowball effect. So I'm hoping that at some point tonight, because I did go on and read what Title IX, by the way, I'm 50 years old, is the year I was born. Title IX was written and passed. But so I did read how it sort of applies to the trans community, and essentially it does mean that everyone, has the right to go into the bathroom with which they most identify. And if they don't feel comfortable with that, they can go to our gender-neutral bathroom, which we have. They can go to the nurse's office. And then in talking with my 3 teenagers, they all said, I don't even understand why this is at all a trans or non-binary, non-conforming, or gender-creative issue, because I don't know any trans non-binary student who wants to go into the group bathrooms. So it just feels to me like there are 2 completely separate issues that are kind of being thrown together so that we could make this some sort of ideological, gigantic debate. When, I think since the beginning of time, unfortunately, not the beginning of time, I'm old enough to sort of say my time is the beginning of time, that, boys going into the girls' bathroom with ill intent is a problem. It's not a gender identity problem. It's a jerk problem, and that's a separate issue from gender identity issues. So I'm just hoping that at some point during this meeting, maybe there's some sort of clarification. Maybe there'll be a new memo that we can all be here to discuss and freak out about. I don't know. But, I don't think that this board, first of all, sets the policy, but I'd love to hear from the board in terms of what the statement is.
That will happen later.
Okay. Hopefully people stick around to hear it, because that'd be good.
Okay, there's a, what's that?
Yeah.
Is there, other people who wish to speak tonight?
I have just a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Lisa Kenyon. If and when you change the memo, how would you let us know about it, the parents? And that doesn't have to be answered now, but think about it when you talk about it.
So I would tell you to check the minutes, honestly. I mean, if we did change the memo, it would take, we'd have to read it twice. So it would take at least 8 weeks
Right, but
to do
the
that.
parents, right?
I would tell you to check our minutes. You should be watching what we're doing all the time anyway.
So, but you're not saying that the principal or the schools would notify the parents?
We don't
about it?
normally notify the parents of any changes to admin memos or things like that. Those are internal. So, if you asked one of us, we would tell you if we changed it. Other questions? Oh, was there something online?
It's long. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, I think you should.
Okay.
You're gonna send it to me, Kristen?
It's in the chat. You want me to copy it and put it in an email? Okay. What seems to be a cultural awareness movement eerily similar to the child abuse prevention movement of the early 1980s is to be discussed tonight at the OBU board meeting. This is concerning. Luckily, I've lived to tell the tale of what happened to me when my educators placed their good intentions in front of the cart and the horse.
I'm sorry, who is this from? Oh, you can't.
Survivor writer?
Oh.
It doesn't say, their screen name is Survivor Writer.
Okay, thank you.
And it's not a private chat, so I can say, I don't know who Survivor Writer is, but it's them. I recognize studies have been done and that shared public spaces for transgendered students is in their best interest. As a grown woman offered the privacy of stalls and public restrooms, I myself am perfectly comfortable sharing bathrooms with these women, and this is no way intended as a slight in any way towards transgendered persons. My concern is for students at OBU who may have been sexually abused and have yet to come forward, which is ordinarily a process of about 30 years, sharing open locker rooms with transgendered students who may have body parts the sight of which could serve as a trigger for victims. Childhood sexual abuse is a significant public health problem that occurs to about 1 in 4 girls. This is 25% of the female student population. My question is, have there been any studies done on how this change will affect students? Will the transgendered students who are using the shared public spaces be required to be respectful and sensitive to the fact that the unexpected sight of their privates might trigger an adverse reaction in some victims of childhood sexual abuse? Has the school board dotted their I's and crossed their T's on how this policy change will impact the entire student body? More specifically, has the school board considered how this change might impact students who have suffered from childhood sexual abuse? The last thing any of us want to do is cause more harm, especially when we are trying to help. Proceed with caution.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Jessica Ketchum. So my son, when he first started here in 7th grade, his biggest issue was, I'm like, how do you like Otter Valley? He's like, well, I like it.
Jessica Ketchum.
Thank you.
It's bigger and everything, but they want to know what I am, like boy or girl. And I'm like, what? And this was a few years ago, and he was very uncomfortable. He's like, isn't it clear, like what I am? And I'm like, then I had to have that talk with him, whatnot. And it just, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it was uncomfortable for him because he doesn't see he just comes to school, he has his friends, he doesn't think about transgender and
lesbian, gay, whatever you are. He doesn't think like that. And I've raised him to not judge people, and I certainly hope he does that behind my back. But so that was the first issue, and like last year we had an issue with him being in the bathroom and having someone vaping in there all the time and having it blown in his face and everything. And I brought it to the school's attention, and they're like, well, we don't have anybody to monitor the bathrooms. And I'm like, okay. So now you want to throw in, you know, there's going to be boys here that are going to screw up, and they're going to say, oh, I identify as a girl today, and go into the boys' bathroom or the girls' bathroom or whatnot. And I just think you're opening up a can of worms that doesn't really, I mean, yes, it needs to be talked about, but it doesn't need to be thrown in our faces daily. Like, just, I mean, you can't get the vaping under control. How are you going to get that under control? I mean, can't we just have like bathrooms and showers for anybody that wants to use them, but they're just private? Like,
Private.
I mean, do we have to like make this into such a big thing where the kids just want to come to school, do their work, go home, play their sports, whatever? I mean, that was my son's biggest concern, is he feels like he has to talk about this all the time. And some teachers here get very angry if the pronouns are wrong. And I just think that everything's just gonna get blown up, and it's gonna like make, that's all.
Thank you. Back there.
Hi, my name's Alex Ramage, and I don't have any children here. I used to be the wrestling coach, middle school wrestling coach. I had to resign because of a mandate that you guys put on, but that's neither here nor there. That's not why I'm here. I just let everyone give me a chance to say what I'm going to say. Hear me out before people interject. And I just want to say we've been really good so far in this meeting, not interjecting while other people speak. So I appreciate that. I was listening to the lady that spoke a little bit earlier. She brought up Title IX, so I brought up Title IX on my phone. It says no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation and be denied the benefits or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So, the way it was explained to me is gender and sex are two different things. Gender is, you can identify as a woman and be a trans woman. You can identify as a man and be a trans man. But if you're a male, you're a male. If you're a female, you're a female. So what I'm asking the school board to do is, I think that's how the bathrooms should be segregated. Male bathroom, female bathroom. If you don't want to use your designated sex bathroom, they have individual bathrooms. I just think that clears the air, and that's not the perfect solution, but I think that's a solution that protects everyone. And the lady that just read what that lady said, I think what that survivor said made a very valid point, that there is a lot of people that have experienced trauma, and that trauma might be triggered by seeing genitalia. So I think this is multifaceted and full spectrum, and I think that we can't, we got to look at everyone's viewpoint, the teenage girl that feels uncomfortable, and everyone. So that's my take on it, and yeah, thank you for letting me be here, and thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Ann Dillon. I just want to commend the students that showed up at this meeting today to voice their opinion, and I think the board and the administration and everybody else needs to listen to them. There's nothing wrong with male bathrooms and female bathrooms, male locker rooms and female locker rooms. I think we need to give these students the benefit of the doubt. They know what they want, and that should be accommodated. Thank you.
I guess I do have a question. Have students been questioned about that and how they feel?
They can't.
No.
And I guess my next question is why? Why would we do this if we haven't asked the rest of all the kids that go here if they feel safe? Because I know my daughter does not feel safe at all.
Well, I think so I'm not going to answer that at this point. I think there's some information that needs to come out when we talk as a board about the admin memo, because I don't want the conversation to be at this time.
And I get that.
So, and I don't know the answer to your question, so we'll ask the question when we get there.
But like I said, I mean, my daughter doesn't feel safe, and I don't think that's right.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments that want to be made? Yeah, Jen.
Quickly, it seems worth clarifying that that memo is from 2021. So
Yes, it is.
It's been the policy, or it's been what the policy of the school is guided by for 2.5 years, and came up not because of what's in it, but because of something that happened, and something that happened that is not addressed by any issues of gender at all, and was outside of issues of gender.
It was an isolated event.
Right, an isolated event, and I don't think anyone out there is saying, well, if a sexual predator is transgender, then it's okay. You know, there's behavior which is not okay, regardless of how you identify. And I don't think anyone's confused about what that is. I think ascribing more of that behavior to transgender folks is wrong.
I'm just going to speak on that. This year we have new administration. We have a whole new team at Otter Valley. We had our vice principal last year and our principal leave Otter Valley. So we do have a whole new team. We, as students, were never spoken. I've been at this school for 3 years now. I'm a freshman. We were never spoken about, about this law, rule, regulation, whatever. We were never spoken to about this in my past 3 years that we've been here. This only came about students' attention last week in gym classes. People during the first semester of the school year, they weren't spoken to about this because this was not brought upon until last week. So as we just recently switched semesters, only the second semester of the school year is getting acknowledged about this fact. So let's think of half the students in the beginning of the year who weren't spoken about this, who have the total wrong idea about this, and they're thinking, oh, well, I'm going to take this as I can go into whatever I feel comfortable going into. They're thinking, oh, I can go into the female bathroom, I can go into the female locker room because that's what I feel comfortable doing with today. That's the problem here. The school needs to come together, put all the students in the gym, put all the students in the auditorium, whatever place we want to do it, let the students know the actual rule. Change the rule because it's not right. Make students uncomfortable, and they don't care about all the students' feelings. They care about protecting the minority, and it's sad. It's sad for Otter Valley, and it's sad for the school board, and it's sad for all the people that go here and that are in this community.
Dar.
Just one more thing. I'm still Darlene and I was still late. I was thinking about the Title IX and I thought, boy, I'm a lot older than that. But this kind of hits personal to me. I don't have any transgender relatives, but I am myself a gay woman. I've raised 2 children, one of them still goes here. And my daughter is completely like, what's the big deal? Like, what is the big deal? But let me tell you this discussion reminds me of how people didn't want to be in bathrooms with gay people. This reminds me of the time that Matthew Shepard was drugged behind, excuse me, a pickup truck because people felt uncomfortable with his sexuality. We're repeating history, guys. I'm not saying that a person should be able to say, well, today, I identify as a woman. It doesn't work that way. If you've got students who are saying that, they're not transgender. Believe me, they're not. And this is where I think we as adults have to educate ourselves. We have to say that one day that a person comes in and says, oh, today I identify as a woman. They're blowing smoke, because that's not how it works. For a transgender person to walk into school each day is a trigger. For a person who is gay, Not anymore, because we have become more comfortable with it. For someone who is different, who walks into school each day, they're petrified. Because in school, we have a bunch of teenagers, and I really applaud you students for being here as well. Because what our kids are doing while they come to school, in addition to, excuse me, to learning, is they're developmentally growing as teenagers. They are developmentally wanting to be accepted by their peers. They're developmentally identifying their identity. That's their job at this point in their life. They have to have the support of a group of people who support them in their identity.
That's why we're all here, man.
That's why we're here.
We're supporting our children.
Right. No, but I'm saying every child needs that.
They all do.
Okay, hey, no, we're not talking, no.
Yeah, and I know that everybody is
Yes, I
here because they are concerned and they love their children or their grandchildren or this school or this community. I get it. I love it too. I had a son graduate from here. He loved it. He was different because he had a learning disability. But he persevered because he had people who cared about him. Transgender people today are so much more likely to commit suicide. We need to also know and do our research as adults, because kids shouldn't have to do this. The transgender issues tend to go along with autism. We need to get our facts straight about autism. Many kids with autism have gender identity issues. So we are going to start, we need to be more educated as adults on the facts. And I completely agree with the person who said that if a teenage boy goes into a girl's locker room and says, oh, today I'm identifying as a girl, ha 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 ha, that person is just being an ass. They're not transgender.
They are, but that's the incident that happened.
But that's what's
That
going
was
on.
put away because it was that child is transgender, so they have the right to do that. That child was not disciplined. They were in school that same day and the next day.
Okay, I don't know, but I'm saying that if that child is saying, today I'm identifying, what we need to do as adults is say, okay, this wasn't seen like what the research says. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to, they don't even have a full brain to deal with yet.
Sorry. It's been more than.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm sorry, I appreciate everybody's point.
Yeah, well, there's someone else who wanted to, I thought you'd keep going, but there's someone else who wants to speak.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Okay, no, thank you. Naomi?
Hi, my name is Naomi Moy. I'm from Pittsburgh. I have an eighth grade daughter at Holly Valley. So there has been research done finding no correlation between allowing inclusivity in gender-specified places for trans people. So there's no research showing that allowing trans students access to shared locker rooms or bathrooms actually increases risks to all students. The evidence just isn't there. So when we're talking about harassment, it's a huge problem in Otter Valley. And for any specific situation we're talking about around this topic, I can give you specific examples of it happening in the hallway, in stairwells, in the classroom, in the Google Chats. So we need to focus the topic on harassment and not allow it to inadvertently negatively affect trans students. So I urge everyone here to look into the Family Acceptance Project, which actually really clearly states why we need to be affirming, because it does directly lower the risk of things like suicide, drug abuse, risky behaviors for those students, for those people. So There's a reason why we do it, and it's research-based.
No.
So I just urge the board to continue to make decisions based on what's known in the data to help, and not to make decisions based on fear that doesn't have any data to back it up. And I'll say for one, my daughter is not scared to share space with trans students, and I know a lot of students who aren't.
Thanks, Naomi. Any other discussion tonight? Yes.
Andrea Cannell again. I am glad to hear from the parents that are here that don't have worries, that their children are not concerned about this, that they're not hearing about it. That's great for those students. However, I'm here because my student is worried, and I as a parent am worried that my daughter that's here now has safety concerns. She should be able to come to school and feel safe. I mean, with everything going on in the world with, last week's incidents with possible school shooting. They have that worry in the back of their mind. Maybe not everybody, but enough do. Even just one. If one safety concern is made, that we need to acknowledge it. It needs to be real. But if they have those big worries, we need to do what we can on this level and just have a safe place for everyone to use the bathroom and get changed. So it's not, I'm glad that not everybody is feeling unsafe at school, but there's enough that are, that it needs to be taken seriously.
Hi, my name is Amber Lee. My kids go here. I have one in 10th grade and one in 7th, and I am actually curious to hear from the administration about some of clarifying these policies and parameters, if this is sort of the difference between harassment and right to privacy. I think that there's a difference between making a bad choice and conforming to the identity of your choice. I think that discipline should be treated differently than the right of a student to pick the bathroom that they choose to use. I also agree with right to privacy. I think there's a solution here that doesn't necessarily mean segregation, but it includes understanding discipline issues and understanding a person's right to choose privacy. And I think there's a way to blend both of those so everybody has a space they feel safe in.
The administration will speak during our admin memo time, so stick around. Anything else?
I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we have,
name first.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Erin Donor.
Yep.
Can we have individual stalls in bathrooms and locker rooms? Privacy is a right. My mother took care of my failing grandfather. Do you take an 80-year-old male into a female bathroom? Or my grandfather, no matter the age, take his daughter into a male bathroom? My husband is a stepfather. When my daughter was potty training, he obviously had to help her in public. Do you take a 4-year-old girl into a male bathroom? Or does my husband go into a female bathroom? The boys will be boys mentality of, oh, well, they're gonna go in there no matter what. So that's not an issue is terrifying. Can't we have private areas to protect everyone's private areas?
Thank you. There's something else in the chat.
Privacy is essential.
Okay. Anything else? Anything anybody wants to add to the discussion at this time? Okay. Well, I thank you all for your comments. We will be discussing the admin memo later in our agenda, so you're more than welcome to stay. And we're going to move on to our next section of our meeting. So, thank you. Oh, which one? It's the very next thing. So, the next thing on our agenda is transgender and non-conforming gender students admin memo discussion. So, look at that. Here we are. So, who knew? So, at this time, I would like to hear from Mr. Ruppel to give us kind of a timeline as to what he can tell us is going on at Otter Valley, and we'll go from there. How's that? Yes? That's good. Okay.
Where do you want me?
Anywhere you'd like. If you want to be over here so everybody can see you, might be a good idea.
I'll share out from here if that's okay.
That's fine.
So we switched semesters at the end of January. And, you know, with that, students are changing classes and having new experiences. Our school counselors were talking with a number of transgender students who are not in PE in the fall semester, but have signed up for a PE class in the spring, and kind of talking with them about their options. As I think one of the members of the public who commented said, most transgender students at Otter Valley have a preference to use single stall bathrooms for a variety of reasons. There was at least one student who expressed a desire to use the locker room consistent with their gender identity, which was not the same as their sex at birth. I was brought into the conversation at that point because our team was concerned about how that might be perceived by students, and we didn't want to put that student in harm's way. So we worked as a team to develop a kind of set of guidelines or like a statement to read to our PE classes. We read it to all of our high school PE classes, as opposed to just the class that particular student may have been in. Because our goal in doing so was to not center it on the student, but to center it on values of inclusivity and respect. So last week, various parties, our counselors, I was able to attend for some of those conversations. We read some information to students, which asserted in part that students have the right under school policy and our reading of the Vermont AOE guidelines to use a locker room or bathroom consistent with their gender identity, and that we expected that all students would treat each other with respect and follow our school rules and our school's pride values if that situation were to occur. I will say that we did have a follow-up report that there was a male student in a girls' bathroom. And we addressed that with that student. Just a couple of things that I want folks to be aware of as we're hearing the discussion here. I think one is that there have been lots of what I understand to be rumors going around about this being pervasive and it happening lots of times. I am more than happy to track down information, but I don't have it. Again, I have one report of a male student entering a girls' bathroom that is like substantiated that we've been able to look into. So far as we know, our interventions have worked, and that student we did significant processing with. It hasn't occurred again, to my knowledge. And I also, this is maybe a little bit tangential, but I think relevant to the conversation happening here, that I hear many community members talking about their concerns about safety, and I want to clearly acknowledge that, when you hired me to do this job, there were things that you were asking, the superintendent, were asking us to work on at Otter Valley. I think very clearly one of those is student culture and climate and student safety. We are devoting countless hours to making sure that we rebuild our systems for that. And I expect that the board and Kristen will hold me accountable for making sure that we improve student safety and belonging in our school. That said, there are policies and procedures in place if a student is harmed in our school. If a male or female student were to be in the female locker room just hypothetically here, right? And something were to occur, sexual harassment, sexual assault, physical fight, we have policies and procedures to address that.
Yeah, after it happened.
Like sold the barn door.
And
Stop. He's talking. So please be respectful.
All these kids have a problem with how many transgender kids?
And I want to articulate that we, in following what we understand to be the law, we are allowing students to use a restroom consistent with their gender identity, to use a locker room consistent with their gender identity. And just like with any other student, we have policies and procedures in place. And if we are not upholding our work in those policies and procedures, then there are processes through which those can get, there can be complaints about the way we've handled that are handled by me, and then by Kristen, and then by the school board. And I'm also hearing that there's trust to rebuild with our community and Otter Valley. And again, please hold me accountable for that. I think one thing that I want to kind of talk through, there's been talk about, well, can a student decide one day to use this restroom, one day to use another? And I just want to be clear that when a student is questioning their gender identity, or is looking to assert a different gender identity than they have in the past, that is not a one-off conversation that we have. There's a lot of work done with that student, with their counselor, with the broader student team, to make sure that they have what they need to be able to express their gender identity at school, and to be their full selves at school. So, I hear the concern about, can a student switch between bathrooms day after day, and I appreciate that concern. The answer is that we engage in an extensive planning process for students.
As a student,
So that's yes. So yes.
As a student, I was told that it's discrimination for staff to ask students or to come forward and be like, whoa, you don't identify, that's discrimination, and that came from actually a counselor's mouth. So that's a problem.
I mean, I can speak to process, I can't speak to hypothetical conversations that I don't know the details of.
Sure.
So what you're saying is that any student can go
Hey,
into any
no,
bathroom
stop.
anytime?
Okay, I've repeatedly asked you guys that we need to let him speak, and you don't get to just have a two-way conversation. You want to do that, you ask for a meeting with him, and you have a meeting with him. Okay? But we're not doing this at a board meeting. You understand?
We're just looking for answers.
I understand you're looking for answers, but you're not going to get it right here, right now. He's trying to tell you the process, but he's not going to be able to tell you sometimes kids don't tell you that something's happened in a bathroom.
That's
You
not
might know
what
it,
we're
you might
talking
know
about.
it, but nobody else knows it because it
not what
doesn't
we're
get to the
talking about.
administration.
It's a simple question. Can a person go in the bathroom on a day-to-day basis, depending if they don't have a gender classification? And it seems like the answer is yes, which is the problem. It's a safety problem. It's a privacy problem.
I don't think that's what you're saying.
Okay, so thank you. Can we clarify that? Is it a
Do you
yes
want
or
me
no?
to- I'm happy to respond.
If you
to the
want to
question.
respond, yes, please.
No, a student, we are unlikely to have a scenario in which a student is changing bathrooms on a daily basis. And again, extensive planning process, extensive planning for that student's safety is our priority when a student is talking to us about their gender identity. I don't want to be pinned down by, we need to approach each of these situations based on what that child needs in school. And we're committed to doing that. So I'm hesitant to answer that question in absolutes because we're building around the needs of the student. So that's all I can say about that, I think. And, I just,
Education.
one other thing that I heard come up is that, we would benefit as a school from more private changing areas, more private bathrooms.
Would you like me to go back a bit?
No, there was just chatter, so we couldn't hear.
I would just say, as a school, we would benefit from having more private changing areas, more private bathrooms. And that's something that we need to incorporate into our medium and long-term facilities planning work, and it's on my radar for sure.
Okay.
I don't know, anything else, Kristen?
No, I do think that, again, this was something that previous Superintendent Collins put into place in May of 2021. So I think, a new administration comes on board, and when students go to the new administration asking for something, they go to what they see is an old policy, an old process, and assume that this has been in place, right? So I hear everything everyone's saying. I do believe that at everyone's core value is student safety, right? Both physical safety and emotional and mental. And I think that the answers everybody's going to want to hear aren't probably going to happen right now, but I assure you that everyone's safety in school is our number one priority. And I also hear very clearly the need for more private spaces for a variety of reasons, right? Not anything to do with anyone's gender identity. A mom reached out to me earlier today to say, there's an awful lot of kids, grades 7 to 12, that just don't want to change with other people for a variety of reasons. So I think that we are also deeply committed to long-term really prioritizing that. But I think right now, I really hope that people hear that this came from a place of supporting a few students who stepped forward, both administration and counselors, and we are now in the place of, okay, let's dig in, let's do the work. What do we need and want this to look like? The Otter Valley Administration, Counseling Department, myself, Support Services has a meeting on Friday with the Vermont Superintendents Association, Vermont Principals Association, and Outright Vermont to do just that. So again, I hear that people want an immediate answer or fix tonight. I wish I had one for you, right? I wish I had $100,000 to go in and create completely new spaces. We're not there at this moment, but I definitely hear people.
I'm sorry, what is your name?
I'm Kristen Hubert. I'm the superintendent.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. Go ahead, Michael.
I know.
Okay.
Coming
You were
back to
thinking,
it.
oh, sorry.
I think, one other thing that I heard in the public commentary that I just want to address a little bit is the desire for us to have a community meeting about this, to share it with the full student body. It's an active consideration, it's an active discussion. I will just say that, related to what Kristen said, that requires thought, care, and planning, and we want to make sure that all of our students are protected in that kind of meeting, and we're grappling with that idea. In general, we don't, we go about our work every day trying to uphold the admin memos, the policies, the laws that we're asked to follow. And we don't have a regular practice of communicating when actions that we take to do that. I understand that this is, there's a lot of information circulating in the community. There are a lot of questions coming up. So I understand that this rises to a level where we need to be talking about it, and we're talking about it here. And I think we're internally discussing how best to communicate this with how best to communicate around these topics with our students and families. So that was one thing that came up that I didn't address yet.
Okay.
The only thing I would add is a couple of people have said, will we know if an admin memo gets shifted? Will we know if any policy? And that's probably part of the reason why we're here right now. No one knew that this went in May of 2021. So although that isn't necessarily the practice, I think there's enough voices here that we will definitely communicate with both the parent community at Otter Valley and the larger community moving forward from this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely, Eric.
I was here in May in 2021. I don't remember this. I don't remember a board discussion about this.
It's not. It's an admin memo, so it wouldn't have come to the board.
Something this major shouldn't be relegated to the admin memo section. I personally admonish previous administration for basically keeping a major change secret, not adequately planning, logistically, thinking absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, safety and privacy, policies and procedures, none of that was followed. Okay, new policy. What's a procedure? What's a safety? What's privacy? Whatever, forget about it, sweep it under the rug. That's what I saw when I saw it. And I saw the date on it. I'm like, I was there. We didn't talk about this. As far as I was concerned, it was hidden. And so I'm not happy with the previous administration whatsoever. This is a major change. These folks, a lot of them feel like they were basically lied to or things were hidden from them, and I have to agree with them. So I honestly think we better get on track with getting whoever in here, an engineer, carpenters, whoever, plumbers, all of it. What do? We need a plan very quickly.
So to clarify, the admin memo basically is just reiterating laws that we have to follow. So this isn't anything that we made up. It's what the Department of Education at the federal and state level have issued, and that's what we have to follow. So I just clarify that for me. So the admin memo isn't anything new that the superintendent made up. She pulled that straight from the law.
The admin memo that previous Superintendent Collins put in place was a direct result of Agency of Education guidance in a memo that was based on Title IX language as well. Yes. And if you look, many schools have the exact same language at the policy level. Ours is at the admin memo level.
And so are we talking about approving this as a policy or making changes to the admin memo? What is our goal
So the
today?
question is for today is, do we want to make this a policy for us at the board level? If we do, we would make it a policy governance policy, and she would have to, it would probably be an executive limitation to show that they are following this. Or we can leave it as an admin memo and that the administration follows this through as it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, so our policy 2.1.
Well, that's our safety issue, our safety policy. This could become part of it, or it probably could be its own.
It could be a local policy.
It could be, yeah. Kevin?
There's a profound misunderstanding that I've heard 6, 7, 8, 9 times tonight, most recently from Natalie, that there's some law in place or some directive in place that the school has to follow. I'm going to take you through that history. It's going to take a while. I'm sorry about that, but it's very, very important because we don't understand what we're talking about. So Ms. Stone came the closest when she said, pointed out that Title IX was passed in 1972. The first famous transgender person in America was Renee Richards. Renee Richards was named Richard Raskai in 1972 and fathered a child. I looked it up today. So there's no conception of transgenderism in the Title IX of the Education Amendments in 1972. No one in Congress was thinking about it. So that gets us to Ms. Collins' memo in May of 2021. And I want to reiterate, I was on the board as well. I never heard of it. Your board, this is completely news to your board.
Completely news to us parents, too.
That's right. So she says in her memo that this is based on, in response to a federal guidance issued in May of 2016, and then gives a link to U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights policy. Did anyone on the board click on that link? I'll take that as a no. I did. So when you click on that link, and I'd urge you to do it, what you find is a policy memo written in May of 2016 during the Obama administration, and it's called a Dear Colleague Letter on Transgender Students. So a Dear Colleague Letter doesn't have the force of law. A Dear Colleague Letter is an interpretation by someone within a department that's issued as a kind of guidance. It's not a law. Okay, when you click on that, what you're going to find at the top of the page, written in big red letters, is rescinded This document has been formally rescinded by the department and remains available on the web for historical purposes only. That was done in 2017, so I searched around for the rescindance letter in 2017. It's under the Trump administration at this point. And it tells us the reasons why this document was rescinded. These guidance documents do not, however, contain extensive legal analysis or explain how the position is consistent with the express language of Title IX, because it was written in 1972. Nor do they undergo any formal public process. Some bureaucrat made up these rules, in other words. This interpretation has given rise to significant litigation, as Mr. Whitney pointed out, regarding school restrooms and locker rooms, the topic tonight. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit concluded that the term sex in the regulations is ambiguous and deferred to what the court characterized as the novel interpretation advanced in the guidance. By contrast, the Federal District Court in Texas held that the term sex unambiguously refers to biological sex, and that in any event the guidance was legislative and substantive, and thus formal rulemaking should have occurred prior to the adoption of any such policy. In August of 2016, the Texas court preliminarily enjoined enforcement of the interpretation, and that nationwide injunction has not been overturned. Now, this is 2017. Mr. Whitney, was that a district court that ruling?
Circuit, yeah.
Circuit court, so that's just one level below the Supreme Court.
One level below the Supreme Court.
Okay,
Just
so we
two
have a
months ago,
very
2
recent
months ago.
ruling reinforcing this interpretation of 2017.
Schools can segregate on sex.
Okay, now we get to the Biden administration. Now, President Biden came in and said, I'm going to reverse everything that Trump did. And so in the first day in his office, I'm reading now from, this is from a law firm's interpretation. I'm going to give Charlene all the citations for this stuff, and this should be public record. So, this is something that we pulled off the web. I pulled off the web. And it's an explanation of what's happened since 2017. On his first day in office, President Biden issued an executive order on preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. I'm skipping ahead. The executive order directs the Secretary of Education to review all agency actions for consistency with its policies. Okay, here's the meat of this. The executive order does not itself overturn the Title IX regulations adopted under the former Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, in May 2020, nor does it set a date by which institutions should expect clarity on what tack the Biden administration should take on new Title IX regulations. Instead, it goes on to say what possibilities. So, bottom line, folks, is there is no law. There are no rules. The state lied to Mr. Whitney when they said there were. All of you are under the impression that there's somehow some kind of federal policy that exists, that's written out in detail, that the school has to follow. That's not true. That's a basic untruth. So, but that gives the administration, and by the way, you know, I want to reiterate, the school board never talked about this. We don't know about this. We weren't informed. This is news to me. Unfortunately, this happened because Gene Collins wanted it to. And I agree with Mr. Pearson's that it's underhanded. This is something that obviously requires a lot of public discussion and input, and we haven't had it. We haven't had any deliberation on this board. We haven't had any, apparently not on the RNECU board. And that's a whole nother issue that we're going to have to talk about some other time, because I hope you all come back. We have many, many issues in this district. For 3 years I've been saying we need more public participation. We need more people paying attention. 3 years I felt like a voice in the wilderness. Glad you're here tonight. Come back. Because you can express yourself tonight. The school board's going to ignore you, frankly. You have to come back. You have to be persistent. You have to keep asking questions.
Yeah.
Can you refrain from speaking for me, please?
Sure, I will.
I mean, you speak for yourself well,
thank
Kevin, but for you to say that the whole board has that same position is not
Fair
accurate.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, here's the deal. This is good news. There's an opportunity for us as a community to talk about these things. There's an opportunity for us to make our own rules, because there are none. The federal government, supposedly, all I can find on the web is the Biden administration's going to issue some kind of directives in May of 2023. We can expect that that's going to go to court. This district court decision is going to be appealed. The Supreme Court's going to rule on this eventually.
Thank God it's conservative.
In years. There might be a new Republican administration, in the meanwhile, it reverses everything Biden did. We don't know.
Okay.
The rules are wide open. We have the chance to talk about them as a community. There's a lot to worry about. We don't know, for instance, I don't know as a school board member.
Sorry, what is there to worry about? What are you worried about, Kevin?
Well, I'm worried about what happened in Randolph. I'm worried about the community breaking down, like a lot of people in this room are tonight. I'm worried about not knowing what's going on. I'm worried about students being reprimanded and punished for speaking up for their beliefs, because free speech is hugely important to me. I'm worried about a lot of things. I'm worried about that the school board member and the school board as a group doesn't have answers to these questions. We have to get it done. And like I said, it's an opportunity. So we don't need to rush into changing everything about our schools. We need to have frank discussions about what the rules are, The procedures Mr. Ruppel's talking about, this is complete news to me too. I don't know whether parents need to be informed if their students are changing, minor students are changing gender identity. That's the important question. We don't know, and we need to get all of this on the table as a community and figure it out. Okay, I'm done, thank you.
Just a quick question, a point of clarification. So that memo was taken almost word for word from state guidance sent out to the schools.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when something influences, and it's on your website, so one might argue that you ought to have read it.
I read it.
It's
yeah.
out there as a link.
Yeah,
I read it.
They're copying, this comes from the source is the 2016 Obama
I shouldn't have
memo.
devolved to that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So my question is, most of school policies are based on these state guidance, right?
Yes.
State guidance falls short of laws in almost every case because it's not a law, it's state guidance. I've been here, I think, for the whole meeting, almost all of it, certainly if not. I didn't hear anyone saying this is a law that we have no choice but to follow. It's state guidance, best practices, and how every school in Vermont formulates their policy based on these statements from the state, or should, and when they don't, they're heavily criticized.
Well,
I've taken state guidance into Neshabie and said, what the hell's going on? This is state guidance, this is best practice, why aren't you following it? And the answer is, I'm sorry, we should be.
Well, maybe we're
So,
attending
I mean,
different meetings, because
maybe-
I think there's been a profound misunderstanding, and I'll just leave it at that.
Right, but that's what I'm trying to clear up, because no, I don't think people are saying that it's a law. I think people are saying this is guidance upon which school policy is meant to be based, and I think you're intentionally obfuscating that.
No, it's guidance that was rescinded in 2017. That's
federal. This is
yeah, that's right.
Stop. Okay.
Something.
Thank you. Both stop. I would like to hear from Kristen, our superintendent.
Then run for office.
Just to clarify, the U.S. Department of Ed and the Vermont Agency of Ed issued best practice on transgender and gender nonconforming students in 2021. That's what Jean developed the model policy on, the admin memo, as we were chatting about. That's generally how most admin memos are created, is by guidance from the Agency of Ed. So that, I don't know what's been rescinded, but that was based on guidance in 2021.
I just followed the link.
Okay, but you can look for a new link.
Provided by the memo that.
Well, it's possible the link is outdated, but I promise you, Kevin, in 2021, both the Vermont Agency of Ed and the U.S. Department of Ed issued guidance on best practice for schools. And that's what she crafted her admin memo on. So just to not throw poor Jean Collins under the bus, that's where it came from.
No, I did.
Either way.
Well, and I think to clarify that Kevin speaks for himself, and I respect your opinion, but Kevin's also not a legal expert, nor am I, right? Nor am I. And we can read a number of different of cases and interpret them in different ways. So I would rather have the opinion of an expert and listen to them about what we have to follow than some links that you followed that are 2 years outdated, right?
Sure.
So I appreciate the work that you did, but there's also more work to be done, like you said. And any work that we do will be based on the law, which we're required to do. If we want to receive federal and state funding, we have to do those things. There are so many things we have to do that we don't have a choice. And to craft a policy that works for everyone. I don't think anyone on this board wants to create an environment that segregates anybody, non-binary, binary, whatever your gender. We're all here to work together and to take your opinions and to create the best safe space for all of our students. And we just want to make sure that that's accurate and not based on emotion and feelings and what everybody's opinion is going to be taken into account. I think that's what I think everybody wants to hear, right? And it will be what's best for everyone. And really our goal, as we've learned as school board members, is student success. That's why we're here. None of us are here for our own personal agendas or our own personal children. I have 4 kids here. I worry about my sons being called out for rape. I worry about those things too. We're here for everybody, and our opinions need to remain objective. And I just hope that everybody can hear that we hear you, but we will work together to make the best decision for all students.
Let's remember that there was an awful lot of cases most recently that have continued to lie to the American people.
Amen. Experts
So
are wrong.
the experts aren't always right. We need to do what's right for our community and the majority in our community without shaming or putting other people aside.
I hear you, but we do have to follow the law, and that's not up for, that's not
So just to clarify, Vermont statute does state, and you can cite it as 9 VSA Chapter 4502, public accommodations. This is Vermont statute. An owner or operator of a place of public accommodation or agent or employee of such owner or operator shall not, because of the race, creed, color, national origin, marital status, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity of any person, refuse, withhold from, or deny to that person any of the accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges of the place of public accommodation. Vermont statute.
When did they put gender identity into it?
Oh, who knows?
Yeah, Jen.
Brett. Sorry, guys.
Question, I guess? If tomorrow, every bathroom had to be single use, what are the ramifications of that? What do you mean by single use? Well, like, if one person at a time, every locker room, every bathroom, would there be options for turning closets into changing rooms? I don't know. I'm just asking the question, because I'd like to know what the implication of that would be.
So I don't have Brenda Fleming or Rich here to answer that.
Okay.
I mean, we could not convert, say, and you know this, we could not convert a closet into a restroom overnight.
But a changing room you could.
Yeah, I mean, we have, but we also don't have closets that are unused by, maintenance or other people in the building. Yeah, I mean, I would say that if there were, I mean, if the board were to pass a directive tonight that said only one student is allowed in a changing space in a bathroom tomorrow, that's what our whole team would be doing. I mean, just to be able to monitor something like that would be not what I would say is the best use of resources.
Gentleman behind Sam and then Sam.
Joe Desiree, my question would be, I don't know how long any of you have been on the school board, but the bigger issue that I'm hearing is the fact that the board didn't know that this policy went into effect. And I get that Superintendent Collins is gone, but if this policy went through as an admin memo, and that's the school guidance, yet many apparently at the school board didn't know anything about it. How are we proceeding to use this policy if the school board, that is our governing body of the district, knows nothing about it, but all of a sudden there's one person at the top that says, this is what we're doing, and we're doing it today? I would advocate for maybe a little more transparency and board discussion. And I know we talked, Superintendent Huber had mentioned earlier that, okay, maybe now we need to have this discussion that when policy is changed or made, that it gets presented to parents. That regardless of whether the parents can change it, at least they know what's happening. And if they have an issue with it, they can come to the come to the board meeting and say, hey, you know, this is my public comment time. This is how I feel about such and such. It just feels like a lot of politics that happened at the very top. That was kind of a shady slide under the rug, and let's pretend it never happened.
So I will tell you this. I would not perceive it as shady by any stretch of the imagination. We are what you call a policy governance board, and I know how much some people on this board love to hear that. But what it means is that the board takes care of board stuff. We want to look down the road. We want to know what education is going to be like in 10 years. We want to know, what our students are going to need to learn. That we want to direct the ship, if you want to call it. Okay? What we ask the superintendent to do is to run the ship and make sure it's steering in the right direction. So we have policies that make sure that she's doing her job. Anything that is an admin memo, which is not a policy that we would look at, is something that the superintendent puts in place to make sure that the things are going correctly. So that's why we did not see it as a board, is because admin memos are only seen by the administration. And normally, 9 times out of 10, admin memos are just following law or policy or best practices. That's why. So I can tell you that.
But something of that substantial, personally, I feel, regardless of what side of the fence you're on with it, I just feel like something that substantial should at least be discussed amongst the board even. That, hey, before it's put into policy, hey, let's make sure all our bases are covered and we're not risking a lawsuit with whomever. Because now who's legally liable if anything were to happen? I guess that's my bigger question. We have policies in place, okay, we're gonna try to, navigate this the best we can, and I understand that. But if or when something happens, who's legally liable? Because we're in a sue world. Somebody's head's gonna be on the chopping block. And who is it? And what's it gonna cost the district, funds-wise, to get out of it? Or to settle it? Or to have to cough up the dough because of the lawsuit? I guess that's where I'm at. That's all I have to say.
Sam, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's actually just a little bit separate. I guess I felt like we were all, like everyone in this room was sort of starting to get back to talking about the students and kind of ways to resolve the issue and everything. And I just don't know if as a board there are rules of conduct or anything, but I truly feel, Kevin, like what you just did was divisive and not thinking about our students. I would rather think that our school board is thinking about, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm talking.
No, we don't do that.
This doesn't need to be like this. This doesn't need to be about politics. This is about our kids. And Kevin, bringing us through this little trail of whether something is a law or a guidance, where, as we had already talked about, it's a policy memo. An admin memo. I'm hearing the things that they're saying. We don't need to twist them and turn them. Can we please get back to trying to figure out a solution for our students? I would really much rather think that our school board is here thinking about our students, not about what, great applause I'll get for the research I did on this tangential issue that actually isn't really what we're here for. We're here for our kids and their safety. And go ahead, boo me, that's super fun, but that's not what we're here for.
All right, so I'm going to bring up point of order. Thank you for what you said, but what we need to talk about is the admin memo specifically. I think that this was, yes, Brett?
I feel like you're right, but also we really do have to talk about policy 2.1, bullet 3.
Okay, but can I say something first?
Yeah.
And then you can Talk away on that.
Well, I don't really want to talk on it. I feel like we need to bring it up because I feel like it all comes together, right? That's where we're in violation, right? Title IX, I don't care about, to be honest with you.
Well, somebody's gonna care about Title IX.
Right, but I don't care about that. We're a policy governance board. This is our policy, so let's go to that.
Okay. Well, on safety, yes. Okay. So one thing I want to say about this admin memo is that if us as a board feel it's important enough to bring into a policy, I would like to ask either our lawyer Dina Atwood or Pietro Lynn to come and discuss it with us. Because they are the legalese, they are the ones who know what we need to do in order to make it so that it protects our students, it protects the district, but essentially mainly to protect the students. Because that's who we are here to protect. And we're here to educate them. That's the one thing I haven't heard about at all tonight, is educating our students.
Well, the principal was busy talking about counseling.
I didn't ask you to
I know.
interject, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but that's the question that I want to ask the board. Yes?
Thanks. Derek, do you want to go first?
I'm not going to answer that question, though. So,
Okay, that's all right.
may I speak?
Yeah.
Okay. Just for some transparency and some clarity, I've been on the board for going on 4 years. And our current board, I see 2 other people. So that I'm familiar with from the previous round, from 2021 when this was put in. So I can say that we were in the throes of COVID and all the stuff that was going on that what you had to deal with at home with kids. We had to deal with a whole different level of stuff around keeping the school operating in some fashion. It was a real struggle. It was a real stressor. And this particular policy actually came in across the board. I remember seeing it. It was probably in the superintendent's report that we were doing this administrative memo, taking the guidance from the state School Board Association, the state agency. This is the recommended language, blah, blah, blah. Good. We weren't dealing with a lot that was on the ground with kids in school at that point. We were trying to deal with buses and food and a lot of other things. So that was in there. It didn't rise to the level at that time because there wasn't a lot of stuff going on the ground in the building related to that. So it didn't maybe get the scrutiny that it's getting now. That being said, I'm glad you folks are here, and I'm glad that it's getting scrutiny now. Then we can talk about it. We can define our terms. We can understand each other when we do that. So it's great. I just wanted to thank you and say it wasn't something that was underhanded, that was slid on purpose under the door to get by something. It was up front and it was out there, but it was just didn't happen to rise to the level of concern because we had some other concerns that were hitting us in the face. So.
Thank you.
Well.
Okay, do you want Eric to go, or do you know?
I'll be very quick.
Go ahead, sure.
Logistically, we are not prepared to implement this policy. There is no privacy accommodations set up at all, which the students are guaranteed to. So how is this gonna be, who's gonna take hold?
We
See
do have
to
a
it it's run?
gender-neutral bathroom. And would they have
Yeah,
the nurse's
but like I
bathroom
said,
as well?
6, 7 having to wait in line, possibly getting back to class and being punished, but also the showers and all that stuff in the bathrooms. I mean, logistically, I just don't see how it's enforceable. As it lies, I really don't honestly have too much of a problem providing the privacy and the safety is there. And to me, those measures are just not there.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, you had something you wanted to say?
Oh, sure. First, you brought it up, sorry. Policy governance is a really bad idea. It puts blinders on the...
We're not gonna do that now. We
No,
are
well,
talking
you brought it
about
up.
this particular policy.
It puts
So-
blinders on the board, so that's why we're
No.
getting these situations.
We're not doing that now. Talk
Hey.
about the policy directly
Sure.
or not.
The key sentence here in the policies under the heading use of gender segregated facilities, And the first sentence is the important one. A transgender student should not be required to use a locker room or restroom that conflicts with the student's gender identity. It's written in the passive voice, and it doesn't address the issues that we've heard over and over again tonight. I'm sorry, I forget your name, but the woman who quoted Vermont statute, I'm not objecting to that. And anybody that thinks that I don't want every student to feel safe, I want every student to feel supported, I want every confused kid to have help, that I want people concentrating on their classes rather than arguing. We don't want to encourage fights among kids. We don't want to encourage fights and arguments among parents. So Sam, I'm sorry if my presentation, which I quite often get worked up, is you thought was divisive, but my aim is not to be divisive at all. It's to avoid the type of horrible culture war situations we've seen all over in other states, where there have to be police at school board meetings and things like that. And I think the people here tonight have actually done a really superior job of avoiding that kind of situation. It gives me faith in Vermont. So back to the sentence here. Like I said, it's in the passive voice. It doesn't address the question of if somebody else objects, what's going to happen? Whose rights have priority? What's going to happen if a student says, this offended me, or this scared me, or this made me feel unsafe? What's going to happen if there's a majority of students who feel one way and a minority that feel another? Seems to be a consensus that we need a lot of private bathrooms and this issue will go away. That would be great. That makes me worry about money. If you've paid attention to previous minutes and previous discussions, I'm advocating all the time that our shop is a wreck, 50 years out of date. So my beloved shop is going to probably lose out if we spend $500,000 on bathrooms. Those are choices that the public has to make and communicate to us. We have to put in the budgets. That we need serious attention to the state of our schools. I think Mr. Ruppel works very hard on that. We have to set our priorities as a community, and it's up to you. So don't leave here saying, okay, this is over, I'm never coming back. We need you here every time. And if you're unhappy with the people on this side of the fence, you have recourse to run or to vote us out. So I'm up for re-election, Sam. You can spread the word.
No, it's apparent.
Why do they only give 30 days to get a petition to get on the ballot?
Oh, that's not our doing, that's the state.
Okay.
You can run as a write-in, though.
That's true. Okay, so back to my question.
Please.
Is about the policy, right?
It's about the policy. It's about whether or not, do we want to ask both of those lawyers to come in and look at this and whether or not, from their perspective, what it needs to say, how we can craft it, does it need to be our policy? Do we need to change it from an admin memo to a policy? And based on that, you said 2.10.
2.13, it's failed to operate facilities with appropriate accessibility and privacy. So I guess I should clarify, because I keep saying stuff but not really getting to the point. The point that I think is that we may be in violation of that right now, and that's somewhat subjective, I guess, right? But if we are in violation of that, if we did agree to that, then how do we fix that in the short-term basis? And it sounds like what you're saying, and I think I would agree, we would need to talk with council to figure out what the answer is. That's why I asked the question of, if tomorrow it was one person per bathroom at a time, what would that look like? Because I don't know of another solution that we could do tonight that would solve these problems.
Are we talking about restrooms, or are we talking about showers?
Both.
It's the same thing.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, though, because I haven't been in all of them, so I've been in the ones downstairs, and there's stalls, so there's privacy. Do the showers not have privacy? Do we not
Showers
have?
haven't had privacy. I graduated in 2008. The boys didn't have shower curtains then. The girls had very few. It's been an issue since then.
So there's no like changing stall and step into a shower?
Nope.
It's all open?
It's like if you went between those bookcases and changed them, we're all supposed to be okay with that.
It's been that way
Since I was in high school.
It was that way when we
It
were
hasn't
all in high
changed since.
school.
Okay.
I'd rather get it from
It's
over
been
this
since we
way.
were all in high
agree
school.
that
We all
just
remember
want
that.
Privacy. There should be no problem from a girl wanting to have a closed door if she's taking a shower.
Well, and
or
if they-
changing
No
her
one's
clothes.
disagreeing with you on that.
But let's just make it happen.
Okay, so,
If a female is identifying as a male and she goes into the boys' bathroom, the urinals are not in a closed stall. How does that work?
Physically, that would be a problem, right? She'd have to go into a stall, he or she, whatever,
gonna be
would have to go into a stall.
There's a stall, I assume, in the men's shower, not just urinals.
In the bathroom?
Men's, yeah.
Yes.
But other boys are going to the bathroom.
Are there dividers?
Suppose she's in there,
Not
use the
floor to
bathroom
ceiling.
as well.
She biologically does not
What
have
defines
those body
privacy?
parts
That's the
that
other
the
thing,
males
you know.
do, that have every right to use that urinal. They shouldn't have to go into a stall. I mean, I know I was
They don't.
arguing my daughter's here, but I have two boys that will possibly come here in the future. And I have to worry about what they'll be exposed to as well.
Well, transgender people want privacy, right? So that your scenario of somebody attempting to use a urinal, I think, is not gonna happen.
It's not that a transgender person is going to try to use a urinal, because as I stated, they don't have the biological parts to be able to use a urinal. It's if that person is walking in, are they going to feel comfortable visually seeing a male, a biologically male using?
Or is that male gonna feel comfortable having this female come in while he's got his thing hanging out?
Mr. Rubel, can you clarify? So the bathroom has no place for privacy, is that correct?
The bathroom has private
Not
stalls
the,
in
not
each
the
bathroom.
stalls where you go to the bathroom, but where you shower, the locker rooms, I guess.
So the both, now that I've been in our girls' locker room, the boys' locker room has like what we would call a group shower area.
Okay.
Each of the coaches' each of the PE offices have private showers, and there is a private shower in the records area.
So there is a space, someone, if they wanted privacy, they could go
To shower,
in the locker room. And is that yet the
No,
case?
no,
Wait,
under,
I
under
just
the
thought-
guidance, it says that they have to have
I'm not, that's
privacy
not what I'm
in
asking. I'm
every
asking,
facility.
is there a space that exists already? Is it in both the male and the female locker rooms?
I would have to check on the female locker rooms. I'm certain of the male.
Nina, do you know that there is? Yeah. So there's a private shower in the women's locker room?
In Sandy's office, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about
So I
Sandy.
guess, how many are there?
Well, I'm just thinking, if we have to implement this tomorrow, what are our options, right? Without having to build anything.
there's
Well,
only
and that's in the
one
PE
bathroom.
office, so how is that any different than them using
Put
a
doors on the
different room?
showers. It's a
They're
pretty
already
simple
going into a
fix.
different room.
Pretty
But you're
simple
saying it's
fix.
an open.
It sounds simple. It's not a tomorrow thing, though.
No, but you know what, if it was like, you could address it and get it going, that'd ease some minds.
hey, me, chair.
No, he addressed
Only
me.
talk to me.
He addressed me.
I know, but I'm telling you too,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
You're both in trouble.
Great.
I know, right? So, you were asking a question, sir, about there.
I think everybody's in
Wise for
trouble.
the board to go for a walk and look at our school and see what it already has or doesn't have before they make any changes to anything.
Well,
Simply a walk.
Half the boys' showers are filled with desks and chairs. Kind of odd.
so, what I want to ask you, Mr. Ruppel, without divulging any information, is how many transgender students who identify as the opposite sex are using the bathroom of the opposite sex? Do you know?
So you're saying how many students are using a bathroom separate from the sex assigned at birth?
Yes. And I mean going, so like, I'm a girl, but I say I'm a boy, I want to go into the boys' room. Am I able, do you know if any of students like that are doing that?
Again, this was brought about by one
Understood.
student making that request.
Okay, and has that request been granted? Wait, stop. Has that request been granted?
Yeah, consistent with the admin memo, yes.
So I have one quick question. If that trans is in the bathroom with their phone, what is them to stop them from taking a picture of my daughter while she's changing?
Okay, so
Transgender people are not out to hurt your children. They're just not.
They're not. Yeah, but you don't know that.
Hey, I am the chair, and if you can't be quiet, I'm gonna just suspend the meeting and you can all go home. So, quiet. Talk to me, okay? And I'm not gonna say it again. This is a very difficult issue for all of us to talk about. I get that. But we need to be the ones who emulate what our students should be doing. So if you want your students to understand this, we have to listen to our students and we have to emulate what good conversation and communication is. And that's not screaming at one another.
Can I have
Which
a
I'm
moment,
apparently
Lori?
doing to you.
Lori,
Yes.
can I have a moment?
Sure, Angela.
I'd like to get back to the gentleman that said that we are not, we are not doing what our policy states, and that's protecting our children. I just wanted to make a statement that if we, of course, I'm not on the board anymore, so I apologize for me saying we, I still feel like I'm on the board, but, if the board feels like that the superintendent or the administration is not following our safety protocols in a policy, then we must, as a board, vote on that, make a motion, and then have, our superintendent come back with a resolution on how she will fix the issue. And this will then cause more discussion with the public and more time to be developed through the school system, through the community, through the faculty at the school. More people will be involved, and we can get more evidence on if she is truly not following that policy, or is there something else that can be done to change, or her recommendation to change the policy. There's many avenues, but you guys as a board must say first that you're not following the policy and have that discussion first. We can talk all night about this. So what we need to get back to is our students safe or not? And if the board feels like they're not, then let's make a motion and state that our superintendent needs to do more investigation, needs to come back with a plan on how to have our students safe.
Okay, thanks, Angela.
Follow the governance policy since we have it in place.
Listen to you. You know the Lester board seat's open. Great. It is, yes.
What happened to our Lester rep?
She didn't
run.
She didn't run, so.
So, to respond to what Angela said, the problem tonight is we have a basic contradiction. That Mr. Ruppel's following a policy that he has to, that a transgender student doesn't want to be told, go to a private area. That they want to assert that I am in the right place, this is who I am, get used to it. That the point is to be in the locker room of the gender with which they identify. That's the point. We've also got other students who say that this action makes me feel unsafe, unhappy, sad, scared, whatever. So that's the contradiction. The assertion of one person's rights, another person feels is a violation of their rights. The solution seems to be obvious to everybody, that we build a million bathrooms and everyone has a private area. I'm happy to do that if the voters are willing to spend the money. But we got to understand that this contradiction and saying, well, it really would be easier if you're a sole single person. We got an entire team in the locker room that's unhappy. This is what happened in Randolph. Why don't you just go use the private bathroom, the problem will be solved. The person says no, because the point is that I'm asserting my rights. That's what we're up against. So my question would be, if we follow Brent's idea tonight and say, okay, from now on, everything's single use, are we gonna have traffic jams in school? Are we gonna have all kinds of problems? Are we gonna have kids 15 minutes late for class because they're waiting to go to a bathroom?
One question. You have 15 people over here who feel one way. You have one person over here that feels the opposite way. You're going to accommodate this person because it is their right. What happens to their rights?
That's the question, that's the conundrum.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
I would like all of you to take a moment and separate this from gender and think about, what if you said to a student, "You're Jewish? That makes me uncomfortable. You can't come in this bathroom."
It ain't the same.
It's
Totally different.
Or put it,
Totally different.
or put it in the context of color.
Nobody's doing that.
This country is advancing.
Stop! Okay, that, I'm willing to have this conversation, and it's touchy, and I get it.
We should not be
She
going
has the
off on
right,
race.
she has the right to say what she wants. I let you say what you wanted. I let you all say what you wanted. So she has the right to do the same. Is that not correct?
It's comparing apples.
I didn't ask you. I said, am I correct? Go ahead and finish, Jen.
I'm just asking you to take it into a different context, so maybe as you look at it, you can see asking someone based on how they identify to go someplace else is not excluding the person's rights that says it's offensive to them that they want to be with them. It is offensive to the person you're asking to leave. So if you can't
I'd like
see
to
it
say
based on gender, look at it based another way. And you know what? As a woman, let me tell you what I have fought against in this country. Raised by a man to a women's college in the military, and I am still paid a lot less than my male counterparts with half the experience. Is that okay? These are the same things, and we want this country to advance. We don't want to be stuck where we were years ago.
I'm gonna call on,
I have a procedural question.
Actually, wait a minute. I want to hear from Susanna. I'll come back to you guys. Hi, Susanna.
Thank you. I just want to first say it's very nerve-wracking to speak to a group, and I'm really nervous, and I'm imagining that lots of folks in the room have had to be really vulnerable, and I really admire and respect that, and I just want to humanize the fact that this is intense. It's really intense, and it's really important. And I think, I feel clear that we all want what's best for our students. And, I'm not trying to be all kumbaya and hippy-dippy, but if you could just look to the person next to you and say, I want what's best for our students, that might put some, I'm not in that room, but it might bring us back to a place of that bottom line, which is really important. And then I would like to speak, but I would feel good knowing that we have that bottom line reestablished. So if you're willing to indulge me in that, I would appreciate it.
I want what's best for our students.
And I think that's really important because I think we've seen this exact conversation play out nationally and in Vermont. And if we don't re-ground ourselves in that, we will just have the predictable outcome because we've seen it play out, the predictable outcome of all of us leaving, feeling more entrenched and less resolution. And the impact of that is bad for us and our souls, but it really lands on our students. And as someone that goes to Otter Valley every day, what our students really need from us is feeling like they're adults, have their backs in a way where they can, and their adults being their parents, their families, and their teachers, their administrators, can figure things out together, because it's a very deeply unsafe feeling to feel like you're in this place where you have to almost choose. So we shouldn't have to put that on them. So that's, first of all, a soapbox I'm just feeling really passionately about, let's remember why we're here. And get really clear on that, and also get really clear on like what can we actually accomplish tonight. Something that's crossing my mind is I'm hearing concerns for just like some big questions and fears coming up around like, is my child safe when they go to school, and do they have options? Because being in a teenage body is awkward at best and can be really scary at worst. Especially if you're in a body that other people see as different and have some fears about, right? So I think if we reroute in, we want all of our students, regardless of their gender identity, to go to school every day, feel safe, and be able to pee, because you gotta pee to learn. You've got these biological needs, right? In order to go to gym class, you gotta shower, right? Afterwards, you don't wanna be smelly because that's embarrassing. Like, we want our kids to be able to have options, know their options, and feel safe when they're using those options. And I think we gotta stay there. We have to stay in that place for our students. And I really would encourage us to please take the spotlight off of our trans students. We need to think about all students. Because frankly, and again, as a woman, I know what rape culture, that's what we're talking about, right? That rape culture exists, and unfortunately, people like me are more vulnerable, right? But we do have a policy to protect all students when rape culture comes up, and that's our sexual harassment policy. And I wonder about in our conversations together, I think what I've identified is a lack of trust, that maybe those policies will be followed through on in a big way. And so this really isn't a trans issue. This is an issue around is my child have all the options they need, which I think it seems like there's been some really good ideas. Like right off the bat, I heard Mr. Whitney talking about like curtains and things like that. That's really productive solutions-based stuff that I think that we should devote time to, and probably not in this venue because I'm not sure that would be productive. But I'm hearing about like, do all students have what they need to do what they need to do so they can learn and have fun and be teenagers. So that's like one set. And then also I'm hearing this fear of like, is my child safe from sexual harassment? And what we know about sexual harassment is that it can happen to anyone of any gender. And we know for sure trans students are not like the main perpetrator of that. And so to unfairly make this a trans issue is really, like, the way that lands on trans students is really, really harmful. And I think that can be hard to wrap our heads around if we don't have like trans neighbors or relatives that we know about. But like this conversation, when we put the spotlight on trans students, ups that suicide risk, it ups that feeling of isolation, and none of our students deserve that. So I would argue that we need to be really precise about what we're talking about. We're talking about options for changing for all students, and make sure that every student has what they need. And I think it's clear that we need more options. And we need to talk about sexual harassment, and do we feel like our school takes sexual harassment seriously? Do we all know our rights around sexual harassment? Do we all know, and you know, what happens? I think that it seems like there's a lot of confusion about like what happens in instances of sexual harassment at schools. And I think those are valid conversations to have. I think it's really important, and I would hope that we can hold ourselves to this as adults, that we take this conversation away from trans students and talk about what we're talking about with more precision, because the focus on trans students is really, really unfair and really extremely harmful. So thank you. Again, I really appreciate, I know I've talked for a while, I really appreciate the people in this room. I agree with Kevin, like, I think part of why we are where we are is that we don't have a lot of civic engagement like this. We don't come together and talk a lot. And we certainly don't build relationships or break bread with each other. So I would also say, like, let's not be predictable. Let's not be Randolph. Let's choose to be a school district where we do the unpredictable thing and we actually grow towards each other as opposed to away from each other tonight. And maybe find opportunities, because it's very clear there's a lack of trust. Real, lack of, like, a real fear is that we just need to invest in our relationship with each other. So I would also encourage the board to consider thinking about what that might look like, and the administration to think about that, because that's a really big identified need as well. So I appreciate everybody who showed up and who's being vulnerable and who's sharing, and I just want us to stay grounded in that. I want what's best for our students and not distract ourselves with anything besides that. Thank you.
Roping toward each other might not be the best metaphor, but that's okay.
Sir?
Brent Scarborough. And I just wanted to address something she said, or told what she said. She didn't want to point out transgender students. So the question I have is, how many of your gender male or gender female students have come forth and said, I have an issue changing with all the other girls, or I have a problem going to the bathroom with all the other boys? You don't want to point them out. Has any of the students come forward and said, you know, all my friends or all the other boys in the locker room, I don't like showering with them, or I don't feel comfortable going to the bathroom with them? You don't have that, I don't believe. That's why you point out the transgender and wherever else you want to call them, because they're the ones that are not having the issue, but are the issue.
I don't know that you can make that assumption. I don't know that you can make that assumption.
No, that's what I'm asking. How many students have come forward? Can anybody answer that, principal?
I think.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, I'm a guy. I'm one of your male students.
Yeah.
I go into the locker room and I have a problem with all the other male students changing with them. Has anybody come forth and said that to you? It's not transgender or whatever you want to call it?
Not directly to me.
How about females? Any females don't want to change with other females?
So when I say not directly to me, what I mean to say is that there are several students who, for a variety of reasons, choose not to change for phys ed, choose to use single stall bathrooms.
If they choose to do that, it's not an issue. They don't come forth. There's not big conferences on it. There's not discussions in the principal's office about it. There's not parents come in and complaining about it.
That's correct.
Okay. That was my point. That's why you have to. That's why they're pointed out, because that's what the problem, when the problem comes into play.
I'm going to go to George because we have not heard from him yet.
So I can speak directly to that. I'm a former Otter Valley student. I raised 4 kids. All of them went to Otter Valley. I have 9 nieces and nephews, all went to Otter Valley. It is a common problem that the kids don't want to change with or be in the locker room. It happens commonly because of the interactions in those more unsupervised situations between kids. They have identity issues, or they're having sexual development issues. The 8th grader who has no pubic hair versus the one who has body hair. I mean, the kids point at them and laugh at them. I mean, it really is horrific. That's the same issue.
Have we made special accommodations for us?
So you can't, you can say you don't have to change for gym. I mean, that's the accommodation that you can make. Or you can have entirely private spaces, right? I mean, I think that's where we're in this situation. That, without having everybody being able to have a private space, you really can't ensure that indeed everybody can feel comfortable, because a lot of people don't speak up about it. They don't speak up about it at school because it's pervasive. It's occurred, and I graduated in 1973, and it was present then. So it's been, it is.
Really quickly, I just want to say that I think we're kind of like going down ends that I know I'm not talking about. I guess I got to stand up so I can see. Transgender students have a fundamental right, a right under Vermont statutes. If it's being pointed out, that's fine. But also, every student has a right to privacy. You cannot take into account the rights of one and violate the rights of the other. So the challenge that we have, is saying, how can this work together? You have to come up with something to protect the rights and the privacy of, and it doesn't have to be transgender, of anybody in the bathroom who feels like they don't want to change in front of somebody of the opposite sex. And when we do that, we can't violate,
Same sex.
what's that?
Same sex.
Same sex.
I mean, that, we were, you know.
Right, okay.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is,
Just check it.
I've had a lot of time here to like listen to everything, and is you can't put one person's rights above the rights of the other. They have to be together. So you cannot ask, I guess, we thought we put in gender-neutral bathroom, you cannot ask a gender student to use a gender-neutral bathroom because they have the right to use the others. They have a right to the public space. Therefore, you cannot ask or have single-stall showers and make somebody who feels not private in that public space to go use the same thing you're asking the general students not to, they're asking not to do there. You can't trade one for the other. It just does not work that way. The only solution is to come up with a private thing, a private something in the bathroom shower areas. If you're in one of the bathroom stalls you can lock the door. I would implore you all to go to the boys' locker room. Shut it down, whatever we gotta do, go look at it. It's appalling. The girls' locker room is better, but there is no privacy in the showers. Some of them don't even still have curtains. The quick fix to this, and I know it's probably gonna cost a few $1,000s, is to put doors on the shower stalls so they can change, do something. And I would ask, reach out to like Middlebury. What is Middlebury doing? They still have communal showers. Is Middlebury condoning males showering with females? I highly doubt it. What's going on there? Reach out to other school boards. I mean, that bathroom is still in the state it was in the 60s. What are we doing? You cannot put the rights of some above the rights of others. The challenge is to come up with that solution and how to solve it all. And I'm actually pretty tired of hearing people say, oh, that person can leave and go to the single stall area, when that's exactly what transgender students are saying that they don't have to do. We cannot flip and trade because it works in whatever your personal agenda is. It's got to be dealt with as a whole. It's not fair, and it is segregation and discrimination to do that.
Okay. So, Naomi, I see you, but I want to say something. First of all, it's almost 8:15. So, and we have a 2-hour time limit. Not that we are going to stop the meeting immediately. But what I want to say is that I don't think we're going to figure this out tonight. I would tell me it different, but I don't think we're going to figure it out tonight. I do know that there, as Kristen said, there is a meeting on Friday between the VPA and VSA, you, Michael, to talk about this issue, correct? Okay. So I think at this time, it makes sense that we need to find out what you get for guidance on that. What?
Sorry. Someone just posted Middlebury has litter box issues. I just want to bring in some humor to the.
And they, so.
Not surprised.
Won't be long. Won't be long here. Well, that's coming. I mean, somebody said that there's no flip-flopping.
No.
But there's such a thing as bi-gender.
So I think at this point, it makes sense that we need to recess this conversation until we can get some more information.
I'd welcome, to get back to your earlier point, I'd welcome a conversation with the lawyers about.
Okay.
I think it's necessary. Detail and.
It is necessary, is that what you said?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, so I think we will definitely do that. In the meantime, yes, Brett?
I'd like to bring up, back in October, we had our report on what I think is the policy that maybe is in question here. And Kristen didn't write the memo, right? So, fairness to her. So, but at that point, her interpretation said that the superintendent interprets this policy to mean that all schools and RNESU offices will be made accessible for all students and parents or guardians regardless of disability. And that when accessibility and privacy concerns surface, the district takes steps to address the problem. So I think that kind of speaks directly to what we're talking about here, which is to allow the district to fix the problem. What that means, I don't know.
Well, right, so I think that's why they have to have their meeting on Friday. I think we bring the lawyers into our next meeting, which is not going to be right away because we, unfortunately, our first meeting of March is going to be tabled because that's town meeting. And the second meeting of the month in March is when we reorganize, which means we will not have any other time to talk about anything else except our reorganization. So the earliest we will talk about this again is the first week in April. Yes, Ms. Lisa?
So
what is the quick fix then?
Well, I think
for
we need to
that?
hear I think we need to find out what they find out on Friday. And I think whatever guidance they get from the VS, which is the Superintendent's Association, Vermont Superintendents, and the Vermont Principals Association, and whoever else you're talking to find out what guidance needs to happen.
So,
and then, can I ask
go
a
ahead,
question?
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which I do feel like maybe something needs to be said now for the benefit of our public.
Okay.
And perhaps it can be addressed through, I thought Amelia had a great idea, was to talk to the student body about what their expectations are around this. You know, is that something we can do? What are the disciplinary actions, right? Because this isn't about transgender. This is about a boy who entered a female locker room who shouldn't have and took advantage, right? So that's the issue we're talking about, not transgender.
Thank you, Natalie.
So does the student body know how they would be treated if they did that, right? Do they know? If you walk into a bathroom and you're not transgender and you're going to be reviewed or evaluated under sexual harassment, let them know that it's a serious offense, potentially. Because we need to do something to make sure kids have trust in the bathrooms right now. Because we're not going to put new stalls in. That's not going to happen tomorrow. So what can we do immediately to help the student body feel better and help them feel safe? I don't know. Maybe there's some things you can think of.
Do you want to? I don't know if you want to respond to that because that would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is within my realm. You know, I indicated earlier that this conversation with our kids requires a lot of sensitivity. It requires really planning for how that will land on our transgender students, because they're going to feel centered in that no matter what. Well, not no matter what, but if we don't do it carefully, it's going to feel centered on our transgender students who already at Otter Valley face a lot of challenges as they do at high schools across the state. I mean, I think where I'm hesitant to lay down like a black and white line is that these conversations with students are very nuanced, right? So if a student were intentionally being insubordinate, right, and doing something that they had been told not to, you know, we hold a pretty firm line. I can imagine several hypotheticals that could come up where if we indicated that we had a firm line, right, and we indicated that we had a firm line on, unless we've had a transition that's been recognized at school, then the student is suspended from school or something like that, right? I think we set ourselves up for a problem where a student may be out as transgender to some people and not others, which is something we need to be protective of. So I would, if we speak to our broader student body about that, one, we need to do it carefully, and two, we need to ground it in our values.
And perhaps maybe not the PE teacher is the person to do that, right?
I should be clear, because that was mentioned, the PE teachers were not the ones who shared that message.
Okay.
That was our school counselors and myself.
Okay.
Heather, I saw your hand up.
My question is, the student who went into the bathroom knowing he was in the wrong, was his parents called?
Oh, we can't tell you that.
Because I know there's a lot of communication issues. I know that I have had issues with some serious false accusations against a child. I don't get the phone call. My student calls me and tells me, hey, I'm being accused of this. He's taking head count one morning and a teacher accused him of planning to shoot school up. Nobody called me. He called me. Mom, I just got pulled out of class. I'm gonna have to have an escort all day. Why was I not notified? So how are parents supposed to discipline children who are in the wrong if we don't know what's going on? He was not in the wrong, it's not what he was doing, but what if he was? How am I supposed to handle it at home when the school doesn't communicate? Or when I call the school with an issue, they don't know what I'm talking about because nobody communicates. It's ridiculous.
It's still going on.
Communication throughout this school, throughout any issue, is terrible. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible.
I also want to speak to the lack of communication. How will we know after Friday's meeting?
That's what I was gonna ask.
How will we know what our kids should expect Monday morning? I mean, I know that there is no quick fix. I understand that. That's why we're all here. We want to get everything out there. We want to talk about what the problem is. We want to zero in on what we can do, and then we want to do it. But how will we know what happens at that meeting on Friday? Because obviously we're not going to be the superintendents, principals, like we're not at those meetings. How will you communicate it to the parents? I mean, because we're here now, and this is only a small number of the parents, of all of the students, and of the students that are, I mean, a lot of parents can't be here tonight. How is that going to be communicated?
I would assume that if it was something, if there was a change in policy or a change in the way things would be done, that Mr. Ruppel would write a letter. He's been very good about writing communication throughout the year, letting people know what's going on. I think he would continue to do so.
But we weren't told about what happened. It was our students that told us. It wasn't administration that told us about what was going on.
About
So that's
the
my-
bathroom issue, about,
Well, it was told to the students by the counselors, I'm understanding now.
yeah, so it,
But that wasn't told to us parents, so there's that lack of communication again. I'm just asking for more transparency, more of parents that aren't in the building all day of knowing what's going on in the building.
I don't know the answer to that. Well, I suppose we'll have to figure that out.
Will that be by Friday, or will that be in April?
Well, it could be well before April, but I don't know how soon you'll hear anything. It all depends on what we get for guidance from that meeting. And I'm not gonna be privy to that meeting either, so we're all gonna be waiting for that information.
But that was my question to Kristen and Michael, was when will we hear that? I mean, that, I know I'm directing the floor as policy goes, but the question's really aimed at superintendent and the principal. When will we know? Can you give us any sort of guidelines other than we can all meet again in April?
I mean, it's a good question, Andrea. I think similar to what the board is asking, we don't know how best to proceed until that meeting happens, right? I think that maybe it was Lori talked about, if we have a change in policy, would we communicate that with our community? As I understand it, I am following the admin memo that is a directive from my supervisor. And I can't make that. I can't, nor would I want to change the admin memo. If there's a significant change to our practices, yeah, I would likely communicate that with the community. We're making changes to practices all the time, right? And we don't send mass community notifications every time there's a change. Again, this has risen to a level where our community has questions, and I think we want to err on the side of communication, but we also want to be mindful of, again, how that's going to land on our
Is it a stretch to
students and
ask that if there is no change, you just let us know that there was no change, this is still the policy? Or if there is a change, say there is a change, we can't discuss it right now, just that bit of communication?
I mean, I'm not changing the policy. I'm not empowered to change the admin memo.
I think she's asking if your procedures change, if you would.
Yes, thank you.
If you would communicate that.
I'll be really fast.
Yeah, okay, Amber, go ahead.
In connection with Natalie's statement about communicating to our students, I think that there needs to be some collective responsibility, that we as parents are educating our own children, that it's not appropriate to abuse rules, responsibilities, and etiquettes Because when you abuse them, you abuse them for everybody. We wouldn't be here today if this one student hadn't made this really poor decision. And maybe the parent was educating that student, and the student still made a poor decision because their brains are not fully developed. But the reality is if we're holding our kids accountable and we're teaching them that when you mess up, that affects other people. They're getting the message directly from home, and you don't leave a principal who's trying to educate 300 or 400 students, all with different needs, expectations, traumas, backgrounds, political and religious beliefs, to somehow say it diplomatically for everybody. Just take some responsibility. If you don't want your kid harmed, in whatever capacity, teach your kid not to be the perpetrator and to not tolerate being harmed. It goes both ways. Advocate for yourself, but advocate for others. Collective responsibility is going to go a whole lot farther than an assembly with the principal talking to students who are probably half listening at best.
And I think it's, yeah, I think it's important to remember that this meeting, we called this meeting with the Agency of Education, Vermont Principals Association, Vermont Superintendents Association, Outright Vermont, before this evening, right? We knew that we needed to do something to make all students safe, right? We anticipated that this was the first time that the admin memo really seemed to be enacted in any way that sort of generated any conversation. So we're doing our due diligence by requesting this meeting to say, hey, what are other schools doing? What do we need to do to keep our kids safe? Let us break it down for you and explain what the Otter Valley facilities look like. Let us show you our admin memo. Let those groups, those organizations who generally speaking sort of guide Vermont policy and language kind of help us shape what we want for our kids. So that's one layer of it, right? The other layers of it are, what does the board say? Does the board want to pick up policy? Does the board want to have a conversation about what safety looks like for their kids? And then there's this other whole layer of, if we all agree, meaning the board, and to Kevin's point, the community, if they're willing to pay, agree that the OV facilities as they stand don't just hurt transgender students, they hurt potentially all students who are looking for a place of privacy. What does that look like, right? And what's the community willing to put money into? What's the board willing to put in money into? And so again, I know that folks want an immediate answer. I promise we will be transparent when we have new information to share. There are some really layered conversations here that at the heart of them deal with student safety, physical and emotional. So we're trying to be super thoughtful about that. And I appreciate all of you coming out. To Susanna's point, I think it's very clear that people just want their own kids safe. And I hear that. And we are engaging in conversations as quickly as we can to make sure that that happens for everybody's kids. Not just one kid or a couple of kids, but everybody's kids.
There's an additional problem, Kristen, that we haven't talked about yet.
I gotta get to work.
You can't leave because you kill our quorum.
Nobody's online?
There's nobody online. We are the 7. So we will make this quick. You had your hand up for a while.
I just wanted, I know that you had mentioned about obviously like communicating with the students, because at the end of the day, like they're the ones that, like they're the voice of the school. They're here every single day. And I know that you had also mentioned that like it's kind of, it can be a sensitive subject for many students, not just transgender students. So I didn't know if maybe doing something like, as far as, of course, 90% of the kids have Google Classroom, sending out, just a survey, that way it's in the privacy of their own computers, and then submitting it, that way it goes right back to the staff. And that way they can do it at home if they feel safe at home, they can do it in the comfort of guidance if they feel comfortable in guidance, if they don't feel obviously comfortable doing it in a public setting. I just didn't know if maybe that would be an option to kind of, that way everybody feels safe, regardless.
I think we want to be thoughtful about how people interact with the information.
Right,
so I appreciate
right.
that.
I just figured that way it was an option.
I'm gonna go to Naomi. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Naomi?
Hi, so I just wanted to keep in mind that 100% of the time now, regardless of the situation, if there's a student who's looking for privacy, they're always asked to remove themselves. So I don't think that's a rights issue. When my daughter doesn't feel comfortable changing because she knows kids have phones in their bag, she removes herself. It's not a right her rights aren't being taken away by that. She has the right to leave and remove herself. So I think that equates to the situation a lot of kids are facing around this. Whereas the opposite is asking a kid to leave. So I think we just have to think about it in terms of that while we continue this conversation. I just want to bring back the point that if I think the bigger issue here around all this is looking at the harassment and bullying policy as opposed to this. So I would love for the board to discuss whether that will be happening.
Okay. Go ahead, Davina. And that, I think that's gonna be the end of comment, just because we are at 8:30, and we know we're not gonna have an answer to this tonight. Go ahead.
Just my daughter, who's several times advocated for herself in this school, because I have to say my daughter's been bullied horribly in this school, way before you got here. I know myself, I've called the school multiple times, and it's gotten to a point that nothing was ever done to protect my daughter. My daughter won't even hardly advocate in this school because she knows nothing will be done to protect her or to even, listen to what her feelings are. So she doesn't even talk to anybody in this school anymore. I'm sorry, she trusts 2 teachers in this school. That's it. She will confide in them, but she stopped going to her guidance counselor. She stopped going to the principal. She stopped going to everybody to advocate her feelings because nothing was done to protect her. So I guess my thing is how much do you actually really listen to what the kids are saying while they're trying to advocate for themselves? I mean, Amelia right here advocated very highly for herself. I'm very proud for what she did in front of everybody. But what are we gonna do? Everybody listened to her today, but what happens when everybody goes back to school tomorrow? Does she actually feel safe at all? And that's my big issue. When I know my kid had been bullied for years and nobody did anything to help her or protect her.
So we don't have a quick fix for tomorrow?
I don't know what your quick fix would be.
Well, I don't even know, but for instance, if someone needed to wait for a bathroom, that they wouldn't be considered late. That would be things
true.
like that. I don't know, the quick, you know what I'm saying, the quick.
Someone who didn't feel safe and needed to
Right.
wait for a single-use bathroom, would there
Yeah.
be a consequence if they were late for
Correct.
class?
There shouldn't be one, no.
Maybe
And I would also just ask, please, go check out the shower areas, before your meeting or whatever, because everybody has a basic right to privacy. If anybody here is arguing that, I don't think anybody's arguing that. You have a basic right to privacy, and no matter if you can find money or not, I'm sorry, the admin memo, the policy guarantees it. So you gotta figure it out. That's all I'm saying.
Is it locked right now?
The locker room? Probably, but I'm not certain, just given the time.
So, it is 8:30.
I have a question, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Is there other bathrooms that could be used individually? For example, where do faculty and staff use the restroom?
So there's a faculty bathroom downstairs in the faculty room, just one bathroom, and they all share that. Assuming students could use it if they
Individual
No, it's just one individual bathroom. It's not like multiple stalls or anything like that.
So there are other places?
One.
One
That they're not-
for
one-
the
just
entire
one for the entire-
faculty?
Yes, yeah.
Most of our faculty use the student bathrooms,
Right.
myself included.
So the faculty only have one. Okay.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Okay, so I think that I think this gets tabled. I think we do need to think about what Naomi said and about our bullying and harassment policies as well. And have a discussion.
Absolutely. Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
How are kids educated on our bullying and harassment policy? Are they just expected to read the
Nope, I can't speak for,
handbook
I can't
and-
speak for prior to this year. This year, our first 6 days of advisory, we had structured lesson plans that each advisor followed that included in part a review of hazing, harassment, and bullying. And Susanna did a presentation to our students about their rights under HHB
So it's like
policy
a,
as-
I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean,
wondering.
it is, and I think it's part of our actual policy that we're expected to provide education for our students about those.
I just
don't
wonder what
quote
the
me.
extent of that education is. You know, is it a 10-minute refresher, or is it spending a whole class on
This was a 30 to 40-minute lesson.
case studies, and I don't know what else we do, but, yeah.
I think in the short term, is it possible for you to say to the student body, while you're figuring out, like waiting for Friday, having that best practice conversation with folks at VSA and VPA and Outright Vermont, is there a way to get teachers to talk to kids in advisory and/or you to go over? I've heard from Brendan and Padua that no one listens to the morning announcements. I'm not trying to cut those down or anything, but some sort of way just to, in the meantime, get the message out to kids about a reminder if you don't feel safe in your space, that there are options for you.
Yeah, can you and I talk together about what the
Yes.
contours of that message are?
Yes.
Yeah, clear.
Thank you.
All right.
So do we have an appointment with our lawyers?
We'll set one.
Okay.
Rachel's on vacation until Monday.
Well, yeah, well, he won't, we won't be having this discussion with him until.
Do we,
Well, that's true, we could do an emergency meeting.
I was
so
gonna say, do we need to consider an emergency meeting?
I have thought about it. I'm looking for my agenda here. There we go. So, being that it is 20 minutes to 9, I am going to say a couple things. Number one, we need a Leicester board member. So there is an open seat. So if you know someone from Leicester who wants to run a campaign, what is that called?
Write-in.
Write-in campaign, thank you. They can run for the Leicester seat. Everybody in all of our towns gets to vote for them. So if you know someone from Leicester, write their name in. Angela Ouellette. Oh, I said that. Okay. And then, I'm not kidding. Anyway, and then the rest of it can all wait until our next meeting. So please note that our annual meeting is Wednesday, March 1st here in the auditorium. And that our next, our new board member orientation, if we do have any new board members, will be March 8th, Wednesday, March 8th. And then we have our regular board meeting on Wednesday, March 15th. So, having said all that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:37.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.